Hello everybody. I selected the case study on the tri-state tornado of 1925 because I found some of the historical background interesting. The overview on the case study is as follows. It is somewhat fictional, obviously, as FEMA didn't exist at that time. But in regards to the tornado, obviously that's not fictional. On March 18, 1925, a large storm system produced at least 12 tornadoes in Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Of those 12, there was one F5, two F4, four F3, and two F2 tornadoes. At least 747 people were killed and more than 2,298 injured. As director of FEMA, one of the first actions should be to make contact with the governors of the states where some of the storm activity is taking place to determine if emergency plans are in place. Next, federal resources must be assessed for location and personnel put on notice that they may be deployed to a disaster area. Efficient communication for incoming reports on weather and needs must be ensured. On the state level, the director must be in constant contact with the governors to determine the situation, the resources, and the needs. On the federal level, there should be coordination with all federal agencies that can provide assistance. After reports come in that Murfreesboro has been completely destroyed by a tornado, medical and recovery teams need to be assembled from the federal agencies, and a request for the same put out on a local and state level. Constant communication needs to take place with state and federal officials to coordinate relief efforts. After reports of 250 dead and 500 wounded in Murfreesboro, as well as fires across the city, the priorities are, first of all, search and rescue and medical supplies, and secondly, firefighting apparatus to prevent attacked homes from burning down. Food and water and law enforcement are another important priority, as well as constructing shelter for the many people left homeless. My critique: while the existence of FEMA in 1925 is fictional, as I mentioned earlier, I did like the focus on communication in this case study, as this is a fluid situation. While tornado prediction has improved a whole lot since 1925, the time frame to warn residents is still relatively small, and good communication is therefore vital. I found some interesting historical facts actually in regards to tornado forecasting, as well as warnings issued to people in those affected areas. And it's as follows. In 1888, the U.S. Army Signal Corps Sergeant John P. Finley published 15 rules which identified signs that the formation of a tornado was likely. He had developed these rules for tornado forecasting during a tornado outbreak February 19th of 1884. Unfortunately, tornado forecasts suffered a serious setback as the word tornado was banned from U.S. Army Signal Corps forecasts during that time, for fear that it would cause mass panic among the general public. Official forecasting of or warning for tornadoes ended in 1887, and tornado warnings were not issued during the first half of the 20th century. All this changed when a tornado struck Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma on March 20th, 1948, causing $10 million in damage. Major E. Fawbush and Captain R. Miller examined the weather conditions that produced the tornado, as well as recent tornado research, and issued a tornado forecast 5 days later. This contained a warning for Tinker Air Force Base for the time span between 4 and 6 p.m. It was issued at 2:50 p.m. and a tornado struck around 6 p.m. verifying Fawbush and Miller's warning. News of the successful tornado warning spread quickly, and the general public began to wonder why the U.S. Weather Bureau could not also provide them with tornado warnings. Meteorologists in charge of the Kansas City office of the USWB reworded the U.S. Air Force tornado forecasts and released them to the press. In response, the USWB completely removed the ban on tornado forecasting on 12 July 1950. Before tornado sirens, there were only bells to warn residents to seek shelter. The siren was originally developed by a Scottish scientist by the name of John Robinson in 1799. He intended it to be a musical instrument. With the advent of electricity, sirens were created as a warning device powered by electricity. This was in the late 19th century. However, until the end of World War II, it was still mostly church bells that warned residents. In response to the onset of the Cold War and the threat of atomic warfare, President Harry Truman signed the Civil Defense Act into legislation in 1950. The use of large outdoor sirens was part of this bill, but not until 1970 were these sirens assigned a second responsibility to warn people of approaching tornadoes. I also attached some links in case you guys want to find out some more information on the tri-state tornado and on tornado forecasting and warning.